Chapter 1: The Refrigerator and the Insults. My name is Marianne Blake, and 7 days ago, my daughter-in-law held up my old leather purse in front of a room full of strangers and called me useless, broke, and a burden her husband would one day have to carry. People laughed. No one defended me. Not even my son. What she did not know was that the woman she humiliated owns a thriving jewelry business, a second store about to open, and an investment account larger than her entire life savings combined. And on the night she bragged about supporting me, she stood 5 feet away when the bank called to confirm a multi-million-dollar transfer in my name. The moment she heard the number, her face collapsed, her lies snapped in half, and the perfect image she built around herself began to rot from the inside. She tried to hide it, but the truth moved faster. By the time she understood who I really was, it was already too late. She had destroyed her own marriage without me saying a single cruel word. Let me show you how humiliation can flip in an instant when the truth is sharper than revenge. I arrived at Ethan and Chelsea's house with the kind of careful hope a mother carries when she still wants things to feel normal. The sun had already set behind the row of maple trees that lined their quiet street in Bloomington, and the porch light cast a warm glow over the front steps. I held a large glass bowl of salad in both hands, steadying it against the cold air of an early fall evening. It was something I had made for years: roasted walnuts, pears, spinach, and a vinaigrette I learned from my mother. Simple, yes, but never cheap. Nothing made from care was cheap in my world. Chelsea opened the door before I even had the chance to knock twice. She stood there in a fitted cream sweater and black pants that probably cost more than my entire outfit. Her smile was tight, the kind that did not reach her eyes. She glanced at the bowl in my hands and let out a soft laugh that did not sound soft at all. She made a comment about the salad being something someone on a tight budget would bring. She made sure to say it lightly, like a joke, but her tone cut right through the air between us. Ethan was in the living room, setting plates on the coffee table. He looked up, smiled quickly, then went back to arranging things as if he did not want to draw attention to the moment that had just happened. I stepped inside, holding the salad a little closer to my chest. She turned on her heel and walked toward the kitchen. I followed her, noticing the faint citrus scent of her candle diffusers, the polished white counters, the stainless steel refrigerator that still had the blue protective film on its handles. She opened the refrigerator and placed my salad in a low corner on the bottom shelf. I couldn't help noticing the hesitation in her hand, as if she was trying not to wrinkle her nose at the bowl. She made another remark about how I should let them handle the cost of meals from now on instead of trying to prove I was managing fine. She said it with the same practiced sweetness she used with the neighbors. I had lived long enough to recognize when someone dressed their cruelty in courtesy. I stood there listening, trying to keep my voice even. I felt something heavy tightening in my chest, the familiar ache of being treated like an unwanted responsibility. I had worked for over 30 years without ever asking anyone for help. I had paid my mortgage, my insurance, my taxes. I had raised my only son without needing to lean on anyone. Yet here I was, made to feel like a burden in a kitchen I had barely stepped into. There is a kind of pain that comes only with age, a pain that grows not because people hurt you more, but because they treat you as if your lifetime of strength is invisible. I felt that pain then, quietly, beneath my ribs. Ethan came into the kitchen with a half smile, trying to ease the tension. He asked Chelsea where he should put the bread he had warmed in the oven. She directed him without looking in my direction. I could feel the distance between them and me widening, the way a hallway feels longer when you know you're not welcome at the end of it. We moved into the living room for dinner. Chelsea had staged the room like it was ready for a Magdalene photo shoot. A candle flickered on the table, the smell of orange and cedar floating through the air. The salad sat at the far end of the table beside a bowl of untouched cherry tomatoes. I tried to keep my smile gentle. I asked about their week. Chelsea answered most of the questions, often before Ethan had the chance to speak. She talked about a new campaign she was leading at her firm, how stressful it was to have team members who couldn't keep up. She spoke in the tone of someone who wanted admiration or perhaps obedience. Ethan nodded as she spoke, though his eyes told me he'd heard the story many times already. I saw it in the way his shoulders softened with resignation. Partway through the meal, Chelsea got up to fetch a napkin from the sideboard. As she stepped back toward the table, her foot brushed against my old leather purse on the floor. She stopped, bent down, and picked it up. She held it up with 2 fingers, the way someone might hold a stained rag. Then she let out a small laugh, the kind that digs under the skin. She made a remark to Ethan about the purse looking like something a person would use only if they had no other choice, if they needed to pinch every penny. Ethan's face went blank in that quiet, panicked way he had when he was caught between loyalties. He said she should not tease me, but his voice was small and did not carry any weight. Chelsea set the purse back down beside my feet and turned away, already moving on from the moment. I felt the sting settle into my chest, sharp and familiar. My hands tightened in my lap. I had been humiliated in subtle ways before, but this was the first time it happened so openly, so effortlessly, so casually, the way someone might brush lint off their sleeve. I finished my meal slowly, chewing with deliberate calm. I excused myself earlier than I had planned. Ethan walked me to the door but did not say much beyond a quiet apology that felt rehearsed. I kissed his cheek and told him not to worry. I told him I was fine, though I knew he could see in my eyes that I was not. The night air outside was cool and smelled faintly of fallen leaves. My car sat under a street lamp, the same car I had driven for 8 years. I unlocked it, placed my purse on the passenger seat, and sat behind the wheel with both hands resting on my lap. I started the engine, but did not pull away immediately. Instead, I sat there listening to the soft hum of the motor. I breathed slowly, trying to soften the tightness in my chest. I felt a loneliness settle in me that had nothing to do with being alone. When I arrived home, the house greeted me with its usual stillness. I turned on the small lamp near my sofa, washed the dishes left in the sink earlier that day, and changed into comfortable clothes. Then I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I clicked through the folders I kept organized by year, then opened my financial dashboard. The numbers glowed softly against the screen. Investment account, 3.4 million. Savings, 2.8 million. Property holdings valued at 2.1 million. A total of 8.3 million spread across decades of hard work, modest living, careful planning, and a business that had grown slowly but steadily. I scrolled through the most recent monthly report from the jewelry boutique. Nora had left a note reminding me that Harold Jennings wanted to meet next week to discuss expanding to a second storefront in St. Paul. Nora believed it was time. Harold believed it was time. Even I believed it was time, though I hadn't said it out loud. I leaned back in my chair and looked around my home. Everything in it had been bought with the kind of money that came from honest labor. Not flashy money, not loud money, quiet money. Money earned from hands that polished stones, measured metals, repaired clasps, and wrapped gifts for customers who trusted me year after year. I thought of Chelsea standing in her spotless kitchen, judging me through the lens of a world she barely understood. a world where value was measured in appearances, not substance. I closed my laptop and placed my hands on the cool wooden table. I whispered to myself that silence was not always weakness. Sometimes silence was armor. Sometimes it was the last piece of dignity a person could hold on to when others tried to strip it away. I turned off the lamp, let the house fall into quiet again, and allowed the night to settle around me like a familiar blanket, the kind that reminded me I had survived harder things, the kind that reminded me I didn't need anyone to tell me what I was worth. And with that quiet thought resting steady in my mind, I prepared myself for whatever the next days might bring.
If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you.
Chapter 2: Cracks and a Stolen Secret. The morning light came in gently through the blinds, landing on the small round table where I had left my coffee mug hours earlier. I had not slept much, but the house felt calm in that familiar way it always did after a night of sorting through my thoughts. I pulled my robe tighter around me and was just beginning to think about opening the shop when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Ethan. His voice was soft, careful, almost rehearsed. He said he hoped I was all right after dinner. He asked if Chelsea's comments had bothered me and then asked me not to take them personally. He said Chelsea had been stressed with work and life and everything in between. His words were wrapped in concern, but underneath them I could hear something else, a quiet loyalty leaning toward his life. He sounded like a man trying to keep peace in his own home. I told him I was fine. I told him he did not need to worry. He hesitated a moment and then said Chelsea meant well, but sometimes her delivery was off. I could hear him defending her, smoothing the edges of her behavior, making sense of it in a way only someone who loved her would. I felt a small pinch in my chest, the kind that comes when you realize the person you raised is slipping out of the circle you once shared. After we hung up, I made myself a fresh cup of coffee, grabbed my keys, and stepped outside. The air had the clean sharpness of early fall in Minnesota, with a few dry leaves scratching across the pavement as I walked to my car. The drive to my shop always steadied me. The roads between my neighborhood and Ridgedale Mall had become second nature over the years, a quiet route that let me settle into the day before facing customers, orders, and repairs. When I arrived at the boutique, Nora was already inside, flipping the lights on and setting out the day's displays. She greeted me with her usual warmth, a kind of sunshine, all wrapped up in a young woman who had more heart than most people twice her age. She asked if I was all right, and I told her I was just a little tired. She gave me a look that said she did not entirely believe me, but trusted me enough not to push further. The shop began to fill with its morning rhythm, the gentle hum of the showcases lit with soft white bulbs, the faint scent of polish and velvet, the sparkle of rings and pendants catching the first light of the day. A couple of regular customers came in looking for repairs and cleanings. Nora handled them with her usual grace. Just before noon, the door chimed and Harold Jennings walked in. He carried himself with the ease of a man who had been in the jewelry business long enough to know every kind of customer and every kind of stone. He greeted me warmly and insisted on buying 2 cups of coffee from the cafe down the hall. He laid out a folder on the counter and began telling me more about his idea to combine our small boutiques into a shared brand that could stretch through St. Paul and Minneapolis. He spoke with enthusiasm, but he also spoke with respect. He said he admired how long I had kept my shop alive and how loyal my customers were. We talked about business for a while, and for a moment, I allowed myself to imagine what life might look like if I expanded. More staff, more reach, perhaps even more time for myself. When Harold left, I felt a subtle lift of possibility in my chest. That feeling did not last long. The door chimed again about 20 minutes later, and in walked Chelsea. She was dressed in a crisp blazer and holding her phone with the same posture she used when she wanted to look important. She flashed a bright smile at Nora and said she was looking for a small present for a coworker. Her tone was overly cheerful in a way that made Nora's eyes flick toward me with concern. I stepped forward to greet her, keeping my voice even. She wandered through the display cases, pretending to study the items with idle curiosity. I could feel her real focus drifting more toward the counters, the register, the walls, the size of the shop, the quietness of the space. She asked how business was going. I told her it was steady. She turned to Nora and said she had always wondered what revenue looked like for a place like this. Nora, being honest as she always was, told her that we averaged just over $600,000 a year. Chelsea's eyebrows rose, but her smile did not falter. I watched her digest the number, watched her reshake her expression as if the information had not surprised her. I excused myself to check an order in the back storage room. It took me only a minute or two to locate the box I needed, but when I stepped back out, I saw Chelsea standing behind the register. She was leaning over a stack of documents I had forgotten to put away earlier that morning. My monthly report, printed and ready for my accountant. The bold figures were impossible to miss. She straightened up quickly when she saw me. Her face had gone blank in that way people do when they're trying to mask something fast. She smiled again and asked if the coworker gift could be wrapped in silver paper. Her tone was too bright, too controlled. Nora stepped in to assist her while I returned the files to my office drawer, berating myself silently for leaving them out. Still, something in the air had shifted, and I could feel it tightening around us. Chelsea took her small bag, thanked us both, and walked out of the store with a different expression than the one she came in with. There was something calculating in it, something that reminded me of the way people adjust their posture before negotiating a deal. I watched her through the front window as she walked to her car. She moved slower, as if thinking through a long and complicated list. She paused before getting in, staring at the shop as though she were seeing it for the first time. When she finally drove away, I felt the space around me settle into silence. Nora came up beside me and asked if everything was all right. I told her it was. She hesitated, then nodded and went back to polishing a tray of rings. I couldn't shake the feeling that Chelsea's visit had left an invisible mark on the day. Something about her eyes, the way her tone sharpened after she saw those numbers, told me she'd been searching for something all along. I just didn't know what she planned to do with whatever she found. I picked up the box of orders from the counter and carried it to the back room. My hands moved with the automatic steadiness of someone who had done this work for decades, but my mind drifted to the uneasy truth that money, even quiet money, has a way of changing the shape of relationships. Sometimes it pulls people closer. More often, it pushes them apart. I closed the storage room door and stood there for a moment in the stillness. Somewhere inside me, an old instinct stirred, a sense that a storm had begun forming on the edges of my quiet life. I did not know what it would bring or how hard it would hit, But I knew Chelsea had walked out of my shop carrying more than a small wrapped gift. She had walked out carrying a secret that never meant for her.
If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you. Chapter 3: Ethan's Birthday and the Falling Mask. By the time Ethan's birthday rolled around, the quiet in my house felt different. It was no longer just the stillness of an older woman living alone. It felt like the pause before a note of music turned sour. The party was on a Saturday night at a friend's house in St. Paul. 2 days before, Ethan had called and said they were keeping it small. He told me they had already invited a few people from Chelsea's work and some neighbors. His voice caught for a second before he added that he hoped I could make it, even if it was just for a little while. I noticed the timing. The invitations had gone out long before my name came into the picture. I tried not to let it sting. That evening, I drove across the river, the city lights reflecting off the dark water as I crossed the bridge. The house was in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with tree-lined streets and cars parked neatly in driveways. When I walked up to the front door, I could already hear laughter inside along with the muffled thump of music. Chelsea opened the door with a glass of wine in her hand. Her eyes widened just enough to show surprise before she smoothed her expression into something polite. "Marianne, you made it," she said. "I did not want to miss his birthday," I said. She stepped aside to let me in. The living room was full, people clustered in small groups, the coffee table crowded with appetizers and half-empty glasses. Ethan was near the back, talking with 2 men dressed in company-branded jackets. His face lit up when he saw me. "Mom, hey," he said, coming over to give me a hug. He smelled like aftershave and the faint tang of beer. He looked tired, but happy in that way people do when they are trying hard to be. "I did not know there would be this many people," I said. "Yeah, Mark and Jenna like to host. It kind of grew," he said. "Let me get you some water or something." "Water is fine," I said. He guided me toward the kitchen where a long island was covered with bottles and bowls. Chelsea drifted along behind us, smiling at everyone she passed. A few minutes later, I found myself standing near the edge of the living room, glass of water in hand, listening to small talk swirl around me. I recognized none of the faces, but I recognized the type. Young professionals from downtown offices, parents of toddlers comparing preschools, neighbors guessing at property taxes. The kind of life I had brushed past, but never really entered. At some point, Chelsea settled into a group near the sofa. Several women turned toward her like flowers to the sun. One of them asked how married life was treating her. Chelsea laughed softly and tilted her head the way she did when she wanted to appear charming. "Oh, you know, it is good. Ethan has been working a lot. I am carrying most of the planning and financial stuff these days. With his salary and his schedule, it just makes sense. His mom is not exactly in a position to help or give advice. She's never really had a handle on money." Someone asked something I couldn't catch, and Chelsea added in a voice low enough to sound confessional, but loud enough for the group to hear, that I had always been a bit old-fashioned, that I didn't understand budgeting in this economy, that she and Ethan had agreed they would be the ones to take care of the family's future. I stood just a few feet away, half turned toward a framed picture on the wall so it wouldn't look like I was listening. Her words moved through me like cold water, not because she painted me as poor, but because she erased everything I had done to keep my life stable. She spoke as if my entire existence was a loose thread in their fabric. I swallowed slowly, the water in my glass suddenly heavier in my hand. I chose not to say anything. There is a skill in staying quiet that people don't understand until they've had to practice it for years. Then something shifted. A woman in a navy dress walked into the room carrying a small plate of cake. She glanced around and then her eyes landed on me. Recognition flashed across her face. "Oh my gosh, are you Marianne from Lakeside Jewelers?" she asked. The room went a little quieter. I turned fully toward her. "Yes, I am." She moved closer, her expression bright. "I knew it! You sold my husband and me that sapphire ring in August. We had to get on a waiting list just to see it in person. That stone was incredible. All my friends were jealous when they saw it. You have the best shop. My mom still talks about the anniversary necklace you helped her design." I felt my cheeks warm, not from embarrassment this time, but from the simple shock of being seen. A few heads turned toward me. Chelsea's group did too. Chelsea's smile froze in place, her eyes flicking between me and the woman. "Oh, I didn't realize you two knew each other," she said. "I didn't either," I said. "I'm glad you like the ring." "Liked it?" The woman laughed. "I brag about it constantly. You were so patient walking us through all the options. My jeweler in Edina wanted to charge almost double for something smaller." The people around us murmured. I could feel the lines of the story rearranging themselves in the room, gently but firmly. I caught the look in Chelsea's eyes, that tightness of someone who feels the narrative slipping out of their hands. As the conversation drifted to other topics, another woman joined us, balancing a glass in one hand. She introduced herself as Lauren Miles and said she worked in human resources at the same company where Chelsea managed her marketing team. "Oh, so you're the famous Lauren," Chelsea said lightly. "I didn't know you were coming." "Jenna invited me," Lauren said with a small smile. "She said it would be a fun crowd." They chatted about work, office gossip threaded into harmless-sounding anecdotes. I listened until Lauren mentioned a former co-worker's name and how that woman had nearly landed a big promotion a year ago. "Yeah, that was a mess. We had some anonymous complaints about her from inside the department. It turned out some of those concerns were exaggerated, maybe even weaponized. I've been trying to clean it up since. I hate when jealousy gets mixed into performance reviews." Her eyes flicked very briefly toward Chelsea. Chelsea's laugh was slightly too fast. "Office politics, right? Some people just aren't a good fit for leadership." I watched the exchange quietly. Something settled into place in my mind, like a puzzle piece that had been floating just out of sight. It made me think about the way Chelsea had spoken of me at dinner, the way she had looked at my purse, the way she moved inside every story as the most capable person in the room. Ethan came over then, his cheeks flushed from attention and alcohol. "All right, everybody, I guess we should do cake. I am officially older and not at all wiser." People laughed and moved toward the dining table where a cake sat waiting with unlit candles. In the shift, Chelsea slid an arm through his and pulled him closer, her voice bright. "Before we cut the cake, I want to say something." She raised her glass with her free hand, gathering the room's attention. "I just want to say how proud I am of Ethan and how hard he works. He's been carrying a lot lately. With the mortgage and everything, we want to make sure our family is secure as he gets older." She turned slightly, gesturing toward me. "We're planning to set aside a portion of his paycheck each month to help support his mom as she slows down. She's done her best, but times are different now. We want to make sure she is not alone in all this." There was a soft murmur of approval in the room. People nodded. Some smiled at me with the gentle pity reserved for aging relatives. Ethan shifted uncomfortably beside her, then gave a small nod as if he had no idea how to step out of the performance. My heart tightened. In one sentence, I had been recast as someone who needed to be taken care of, a character written without input in a play I had not agreed to. I didn't make a scene. I didn't argue. I simply studied my son's face, looking for the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and promise he would always look out for me. Now he just looked trapped. They lit the candles and everyone sang. I joined in softly. Ethan blew out the candles, people clapped, and conversation rose again like a wave. A little later, while guests sliced cake and drifted back into their small circles, my phone buzzed in my purse. I stepped into the hallway to check it. The screen showed a familiar number from the bank. I answered and pressed the phone to my ear. "Hello, this is Marianne." "Hi, Mrs. Blake. This is Mark Watson from Lakeside Financial. I just wanted to confirm the transfer we discussed for your investment portfolio. The $3.4 million account will be adjusted into the new funds on Monday morning. I can go over the details on Monday if you like." I listened, gave a quiet confirmation, and thanked him. As I was about to hang up, I saw a shadow move near the corner. Chelsea stood just inside the hallway, holding her empty wine glass, her eyes fixed on me. "Everything all right?" she asked as I ended the call. "It is, just the bank." I watched her face as the words $3.4 million echoed in the air between us, even though only one of us had heard them spoken.
Her eyes flickered, startled, then quickly smoothed over. She pulled her shoulders back and gave me a little smile. "Good," she said. "Glad you are getting things handled." She walked past me, back into the living room, but there was a stiffness in her posture that had not been there earlier. I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the sound of voices and music floating back toward me. The laughter seemed thinner now, stretched over something brittle. Not long after, I found my coat and told Ethan I was heading out. He hugged me and thanked me for coming. Chelsea offered a polite goodbye, her eyes guarded, her smile carefully arranged. Once outside, I drew in a long breath of cold night air. The sky over St. Paul was clear, the stars faint against the glow of the city. I walked slowly to my car, each step feeling heavier than the last. The ride home was quiet. The radio stayed off. It was just me and the steady sound of the tires on the road while my thoughts replayed the evening. Her words about supporting me, the woman praising my work, Lauren's small warning about jealousy at the office, the look in Chelsea's eyes when she heard 3.4 million. What hurt the most was not the lies or the half-truths. It was the ease with which people accepted the story that I had nothing of my own. The way a room full of strangers could look at me and assume I had no voice worth hearing. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew something fundamental had shifted, even if no one else could see it yet. If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you. Chapter 4: The Truth and the Light. The sunlight had barely touched the storefront windows when I unlocked the door to the boutique the next morning. I felt the kind of heaviness that settles in the bones after a night spent thinking instead of sleeping. I flipped on the lights, the soft glow bouncing off the glass cases, and took a slow breath. I did not know what the day would bring, but my instincts told me it would not be ordinary. I had just hung my coat in the back when the bell above the door chimed. I expected Nora. Instead, Chelsea stepped inside holding 2 paper cups from a coffee shop in Ridgedale Mall. Her smile was too wide, stretched thin like fabric pulled too tight. She walked across the floor with quick steps, the heels of her boots tapping a little too sharply. "Morning, Marianne," she said. "I brought you a latte. Thought you might like it." I wiped my hands on a cloth and stepped forward. "That was kind of you," I said. She set the cup on the counter without really looking at it, then leaned her elbows on the glass case as if she owned the place. Her eyes moved quickly around the store, but not in the curious way of a shopper. It was the assessing look of someone trying to gauge the value of every square foot. "I was thinking about last night," she began. "Family is complicated. Responsibilities are complicated." I nodded once, waiting. She kept talking.
I just want to make sure we all have a plan, she said, for the future, for you, for us. Long term, financially speaking. I lifted the cup and set it aside. I have managed fine for many years, I said calmly. She gave a small laugh as if trying to soften the edge of her words. Sure, but things are changing. With retirement and aging and obligations, you do not have to pretend to be independent if you are struggling. Ethan and I want to help. I have not asked for help, I said quietly. She leaned closer. Exactly. That is what worries me. There was a tightness in her voice when she said it, a thin layer of impatience beneath the sugar. I felt the shift inside her, the new confidence she carried since seeing those numbers on my report. It was the confidence of someone who believed they now understood the leverage in the room. Before I could respond, the bell chimed again, and Nora walked in, cheeks flushed from the cold. She greeted us both and headed to the back to put down her bag. Chelsea watched her leave, then turned to me again, her tone suddenly sharper. You pretending to be self-sufficient is not helping anyone. It is better to be honest about what you need instead of making Ethan and me guess. I let a breath settle in my chest. I do not need anything from you, I said quietly. Chelsea's smile dissolved. That is not true. You can hide your paperwork, but in the end, we are the ones who will have to take care of everything. You cannot do this forever. You cannot keep putting this on Ethan. It's going to fall on us eventually. Her words sharpened at the edges, and I saw something cold in her eyes. She had convinced herself that I was her responsibility, that my existence was a burden she had inherited. It didn't matter what reality was, it only mattered what she wanted to believe. Chelsea, I'm making assumptions. She snapped back before I could finish. You can pretend all you want, but we are not stupid. We know how this ends. People your age need support, and honestly, it is selfish to act like you don't need. So stop hiding, because in the end, we are the ones who have to carry you. The shock of those words hit me hard, not because they were new, but because she finally said them out loud. The cruelty was no longer disguised. Before I could respond, the door opened again. Mom, do you have a second? Ethan called as he stepped inside. Chelsea froze. Her face went pale. Ethan had walked in at the exact moment her voice was raised enough to carry. He looked at her, then at me. What did you just say? He asked. Chelsea swallowed, her voice suddenly thin. Nothing. We were just talking about plans, future planning. She misunderstood. I heard you, he said. Say it again. She shook her head. No, Ethan, I was stressed, that's all. I did not mean it to sound harsh. You told her we would have to carry her. You said she is hiding. Why would you say something like that? Chelsea's eyes darted between us. I thought she needed help. You said so yourself. You said she has trouble keeping up. When did I say that? She demanded. Not in those words, she stammered, but you implied it. I was only trying to protect us. He stepped closer, his jaw tight. Protect us from what? My mother has never needed anything from us. Chelsea lifted her chin. She's been hiding her finances. I found out she's not as stable as she acts. You found out? He asked. How? She hesitated too long. I could see him connecting the dots. His voice dropped. You went through her things. No, she said quickly. I just saw papers left out. It was an accident. Nora stepped forward from the back, her voice steady. She was looking through the paperwork when you came in, she said to Ethan. Chelsea's eyes widened in panic. That is not true. You do not know what you saw. The air went silent. Ethan looked at me, waiting. I held his gaze. I'm fine, I said. I've been fine for over 30 years. I reached into my drawer and pulled out the folder with the reports inside. I placed it on the counter and opened it to the summary page. He leaned over and read the numbers. His lips parted slightly. "Mom," he whispered, "this is—" "I have always taken care of myself," I said. "I did not tell you because I didn't think it was necessary." He turned slowly toward Chelsea. "You have been accusing her of needing support, but she is more stable than we are." Chelsea's face twisted, fear and anger battling under her skin. "I only wanted to help," she said. "I was trying to figure things out. It's not my fault she hides everything." "You called her a burden. You said we would have to carry her. You lied to me about her being unstable. You lied to me about what happened at the store. You lied to me last night in front of everyone." She shook her head hard, tears rising quickly. "You are twisting it. You're making me the bad guy. I was under pressure. I only wanted to make sure we were protected. You know how hard things are at work. You know how my parents depended on me. You know I cannot handle more responsibility." "It's not responsibility," he said softly. She stepped toward him. "Ethan, please. I was scared. I thought she was hiding something dangerous. I thought she was struggling. I only wanted to help." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped back. "We are going home," he said quietly. "We are going to talk, and we are going to figure out what all of this means." Chelsea reached for his arm. "Ethan, please do not go. Not like this." He pulled his arm away gently. "I need space, and you need to stop talking." He turned to me. "I'll call you later." I nodded. I did not trust my voice enough to answer. They walked out together, but the distance between them was wider than the width of the doorway. I watched them cross the parking lot, their bodies stiff, their voices low. When they reached their car, Ethan opened the passenger door for her, then shut it without another word. I stood behind the counter long after the sound of the engine faded. Nora came to my side and placed a gentle hand on my arm. I managed a small smile. I glanced at the door where they had disappeared moments earlier. I knew what I had seen in Ethan's eyes before he left. Shock, hurt, clarity. Something long overdue had finally surfaced. And in that moment, I understood that a door in our family had begun to close, slowly but firmly. It would not slam, it would not break, but it would close all the same.
If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you. Chapter 5: The Break and the True Worth. I sat in the quiet of my shop long after Ethan and Chelsea had driven away, letting the silence settle over me like a soft blanket. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, made myself coffee, and waited for the day to steady my breathing. But the calm did not last long. By mid-afternoon, the phone began ringing and everything that had been left unsaid between Ethan and Chelsea came crashing into the open. Later that evening, Ethan called. His voice was strained, the kind of tightness that comes when someone has cried or shouted or both. He asked if he could stop by after work. I told him I would be home. When he arrived, I could see exhaustion carved into his face. He sat on my sofa and rested his elbows on his knees. "We had a fight," he said. "A real one." I nodded gently and waited. "She kept insisting she was trying to protect us. She said she thought you were hiding financial problems. She said she only wanted clarity for the future. But when I asked why she went through your private papers or why she kept belittling you to our friends, she had no answer." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I told her I was done pretending everything was normal." I did not interrupt him. I waited again. "She yelled," he said quietly, "at me, at herself, at the situation.
Then she said it was all my fault for not being clear about expectations, that her parents always counted on her, and she assumed she would need to carry you too. I told her she had built an entire story about you that was not true, and that she had done it because it made her feel superior. He let out a long breath. We are taking time apart. I have been staying at a coworker's place. I need space to figure things out. I placed my hand over his. I'm sorry it hurts, I said. I'm not sure what hurts more, he said, losing the marriage I thought I had, or realizing how blind I have been. He stayed a while longer, talking in slow circles, the way people do when trying to rewrite the shape of their lives in real time. When he finally stood to leave, he hugged me with a sincerity I had not felt in years. 2 days after that, I heard from Nora that a few women in Chelsea's department had spoken with Lauren. Word had gotten around about the birthday party, about Chelsea's comments regarding her family, and about how she had handled conflicts at work. Lauren had started quietly reviewing some of the complaints tied to Chelsea's name. I was not happy about it, but I was not surprised. Actions, especially cruel ones, rarely stay hidden. That weekend, Maggie Ortiz from next door came by with a basket of muffins and that look she always had when she sensed something was wrong before I even told her. We sat at my kitchen table while she listened to the whole story, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea as if absorbing the weight of it all. When I finished, she shook her head slowly. People like Chelsea built entire worlds out of the stories they tell themselves. It is not your fault if she built one out of fear and insecurity. You did not put her in that cage. She locked herself in it. Her words felt like a salve. Over the next few days, I returned to work and let the routine anchor me again. Customers came and went, repairs piled up, orders needed to be shipped. Life moved on in small but steady motions. On Wednesday afternoon, the door chimed and Harold Jennings stepped inside with a folder under his arm. He smiled in that warm, steady way he always did and asked if I had a few minutes. We sat at the counter while he laid out the expansion plan. He talked about a second storefront in St. Paul, a shared warehouse, a new line of custom pieces, and flexible staffing to give me more time off if I ever wanted it. As he spoke, I felt something blossom quietly inside of me, something I had not let myself feel in a long time. Hope, forward motion, a life not defined by the weight of other people's judgments. When Harold left, I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him cross the parking lot. The cold wind tugged at his coat, and he lifted a hand to wave once before climbing into his truck. I closed the door with a sense of calm settling across my shoulders. That night, after closing up the shop, I sat in my living room with a cup of mint tea. The house felt warm and safe, the kind of space that asks nothing and gives everything. My phone lit up on the coffee table. It was a text from Chelsea. Marianne, can we meet? Just us. I want to explain. I stared at the message for a long moment. My thumb hovered above the screen. Then I typed slowly and deliberately. There is nothing left to explain. Take care of yourself. I sent it and set the phone down. There was no anger in me, no satisfaction either, only clarity. She and I had walked as far together as we were meant to. The rest was hers to learn, not mine to carry. A few days later, Ethan came by again. This time he looked lighter. Hurt, yes, but clearer. He sat beside me and held my hand the way he used to when he was young. I'm sorry, Mom, for not seeing it sooner, for letting her make you feel small. I said, you did not make me feel anything. People reveal themselves in time. It is not your fault. He looked down at our hands. I want to rebuild things, he said, with you, with myself. I want to do better. You already are, I said. We sat like that for a while, in the soft quiet of my living room, neither of us trying to fill the silence. When he finally stood to leave, he hugged me long and tight. I watched him walk to his car, shoulders straighter than they had been in years. He paused before getting in, gave me a small nod, then drove away. As the tail lights disappeared around the corner, I felt the last piece of tension loosen in my chest. Something had ended, but something else had begun its slow, steady rise. In that moment, I understood that respect doesn't come from bank accounts or appearances. It comes from how people choose to treat those they think they can overlook. And when the truth finally speaks for itself, it doesn't need to shout. If you've ever been misjudged because of how you look, where you live, or what people assume you lack, remember this. Your value is not defined by their stories. It will reveal itself when the time is right. And if this story reminded you of your own, or made you feel seen, feel free to share it. Stay connected and be part of the conversations that keep stories like this alive. Sometimes the quietest truth is the one that lasts the longest.